Mr. Robert Norris of Liverpool, England, was involved in the slave trade in West Africa for 18 years in the mid to late 1700s. His time spent among Africans gave him a very intimate knowledge of their language, character, and culture. He visited Dahomey, the capital of the Dahomey Kingdom, in 1772, where he obtained much information on the Dahomey people and their king at the time, Bossa Ahadee. He found that the origin of Dahomey could be traced back to the chief of the Foy nation in the early 1600s. This chief went by the name of Tekudamu. A prince of Carmina, a neighboring nation, came to visit Tekudamu to honor a festival that was being held. On this visit, for reasons all his own, Tekudamu murdered this prince. He then attacked and conquered Carmina. Strengthened by this imperial acquisition, Tekudamu ventured to wage war on Dahomey. During the siege on Dahomey, Dah, its king, was taken captive by Tekudamu's army. True to what he had previously vowed, Tekudamu eviscerated Dah's abdomen, or belly, and placed his mutilated corpse on the foundation of a palace he was building in Dahomey, in commemoration of his barbarous victory. From thenceforward, these Foys became known as Dahomans, the citizens or subjects of the new kingdom of Dahomey, the translation of which means, a house built in Dah's belly. Approximately 100 years later, the Dahomeyan king Trudo, a descendant of Tekudamu, further aggrandized the kingdom, subduing various neighboring kingdoms, and adding Wida to the Dahomey dominions in 1727. When the Dahomeyan king Bossa Ahadee came to power, he enacted an edict where any and every native in the kingdom with the name Bossa was to be immediately executed, he deeming it an insult that anyone else dare to share his same name. If any Dahomeyan was convicted, or sometimes simply accused of a crime, and the sentence demanded either death or slavery, all of the alleged perpetrators' belongings fell under the ownership of the king. The family, relatives, and friends of the convicted were then also put to death or sold as slaves. Dahomeyan kings had a saying, "Their house wanted thatch." This meant that they desired the military to go on a slave raid and bring back many slaves, the heads, skulls, and jawbones of which the king would use for various types of decoration, particularly on their palaces. Criminals were sometimes decapitated, their heads then being publicly displayed on stakes that they themselves were required to provide. When Norris made his visit, Bossa Ahadee's seraglio, or harem, consisted of between 3,000 and 4,000 women. Principal men of the kingdom typically had 100 to 400 wives, lesser elite males having tens. The remaining masses of men had to settle for prostitutes, prostitution being an institution in Dahomey, each village being assigned proportional amounts of female prostitutes and their accompanying housing, or brothels. Human sacrifice was prolific in Dahomey. At many of the festivals, or customs, where these sacrifices were often performed, large numbers of Dahomeyans danced around the victims and executioners. Any slip of the foot on the part of these dancers resulted in them being pulled aside and decapitated, a misstep in these ceremonies being considered a bad omen. As these unfortunate dancers were being put to death, the rest of the dancers wouldn't miss a beat, they continuing to dance as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. In one human and animal sacrifice that Norris witnessed, there were 7 men secured to poles by their wrists and ankles. Across from them were 7 horses lashed to poles in a similar fashion. These men and horses were set to be decapitated at the coming festival. As Norris made his way away from this ghastly scene, he noticed a horrible stench. Upon looking around, he saw the headless bodies of 32 horses and 36 men, sacrifices from the 2 previous festivals. He then went to the marketplace, hoping to elude any more terrible sights, but to no avail. Both ends of the marketplace, the 2 entrance-exit areas, were gibbets with dead bodies attached to them. The corpses on the gibbets were naked men, strung up by their ankles and hanging downwards, with their genitals having been cut off. Vultures were tearing out their bowels and feasting on the bodies piecemeal. This was not the only time Norris witnessed bodies on gibbets in Dahomeyan marketplaces. On the last day of the Dahomeyan annual customs, Norris saw, thrown from a tall stage, a man tied by his neck and heels, a muzzled alligator, and pigeons with clipped wings. The bound man and these animals landed amongst the anticipating multitude of Dahomeyan subjects. Pandemonium ensued as they rushed and fought for the heads of the animals and the man, the eventual possessors of them being given a reward, or prize, by the king. As if that wasn't dark enough, the body of the then headless man was eaten. Human sacrifices were performed in various ways, and for various reasons, in Dahomey. When Bossa Ahadee died, 285 of his wives killed each other somehow, believing that their souls would then accompany him in the afterlife. 6 of wives were buried alive along with his corpse, the 285 already dead wives being piled into the grave at the same time.